One thing you're definitely going to notice from this movie is Tarantino's foot fetish, because it shows a lot. And it doesn't matter if they're dirty feet or clean feet. Trust me. Welcome back, guys. I finally got to watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is Tarantino's 9th film. That's if you count Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 as one single movie, which he said it was. So this movie is based around the life of Rick Dalton, who is played by Leonardo Dicaprio. Brad Pitt plays Cliff Booth, who is his stunt double slash best friend. And you also have Sharon Tate here, who is portrayed by Margot Robbie. You also have some cameos in this movie like Kurt Russell, Pacino, Dakota Fanning, and a few others whose name I don't remember. But what I'm going to talk about in this movie is sort of like a review, and at the end of the video I'm also going to talk about the ending of the film, because the ending of the film is a little bit different from what happened in real life. Obviously Tarantino took his liberties, which I'm kind of glad he did, because if you guys are not aware, Sharon Tate in real life was murdered by members of the Manson family. So in this movie I was wondering, you know, what that ending of this film was going to look like. So I'm kind of glad that Tarantino took his liberties. But let's talk about the film itself, because Tarantino dedicated this movie to Hollywood itself in the 1960s. In this case 1969. You have Rick Dalton, who's played by Leonardo DiCaprio. He is this big movie star, or a star in a show that looks like it's coming to an end, and he is struggling to find a way to get back to the top. And it's kind of funny because in a way I feel like I can relate to these characters, even though I'm not an actor or, you know, haven't done any movies or anything like that, but I feel like I can relate to it because of the stuff that I do on YouTube. One of the things that Tarantino does so good in all of his movies is the dialogue, and it works even better when you have actors of this status. You know, I've never seen Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio work together, and seeing them work together for the first time was very good. Like I really want to see them in other films again together. You know, like that would be so much fun, because this movie in a way was kind of a comedy. Now the runtime itself is over 2 hours, and for a Tarantino film, I think this is the first time that I could say that I honestly felt the 2-hour run mark. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. The movie itself is a slow burn, and I feel like all the scenes with the dialogue, it wraps up in the end, because if you think about it, Rick Dalton, Cliff Booth, and Sharon Tate, they're kind of doing their own thing. Sharon Tate in this movie to me was a little bit of a bummer, because she is heavily advertising the trailers and, you know, and posters and stuff like that. And Margot Robbie is a phenomenal actor. Like I really like a lot of the movies she does, so she doesn't have a whole lot to do in this movie, but I feel like the way that Tarantino utilizes Sharon Tate in this movie is to show us the good sides of Hollywood. You know, like an actress coming up to bigger roles and, you know, getting to the top of Hollywood itself. Like Sharon Tate was portrayed very well in this movie. She was a very outgoing person. She was happy all of the time. You know, you see bits here and there from her and Roman Polanski, and you know, it's kind of hinted throughout the movie about her relationship with Jay Sebring, which is kind of odd. I kind of like that. I like that he uses Sharon Tate as kind of like a symbolism of like the good things that comes with Hollywood, and that's kind of like the fact that you're a movie star. And I like the scene where she is in the movie theater seeing herself on screen and like kind of listening to the audience react to her performance, which is pretty cool, because I'm telling you, it's weird, but in a way I can relate to some of those scenes. And then also you have Rick Dalton, and I already am a huge fan of Leonardo DiCaprio, so I mean, not only because of him but also because of Tarantino is why I was looking forward to this film. But Leonardo DiCaprio has an awesome scene where he freaks out. I mean, he just loses his mind in his trailer, and he is, I mean, like just slamming things. He's pissed off because he messed up some of his lines, and I'm not saying that I do the same thing, but like I know how it feels to mess up like the script, or whenever I'm talking to camera like you guys. So it's weird in a way that I can relate to that. And Cliff Booth, on the other hand, he's more laid back. Brad Pitt, for me, I think stole the show, especially towards the end of the movie, and I will talk about that. Spoilers, just in case you guys don't want that ending spoiled. But Cliff Booth's character was pretty good. Like I really liked that. He was very laid back. He was like the best friend that was always there for Rick Dalton. He's giving him rides to the movie sets and all those things. Let's quickly talk about the production, because it's awesome. I mean, it felt like a movie from the 60s. You see a lot of movie clips where Leonardo DiCaprio seems like he's in a Western, and the movies themselves seem like they were shot back then in the 60s. So that's pretty cool to see. It's cool to see that Tarantino, a filmmaker now in 2019, can replicate like scenes like those from movies that were supposed to happen in the 1960s. And the movie itself has the structure of that of 1960s films in some ways. But in some cases, I feel like he overdoes it, especially with the scenes where they're just kind of driving from point A to point B, I feel like, yeah, maybe some of those scenes should have been cut off, because at some points, you know, they're driving away, the music's awesome, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, you know, now what? Like, we're just gonna enjoy the ride with them. Anyway, I like that stuff. One of the things that was missing from this movie for me, and it's not a huge complaint, but it's something that I definitely miss from a Tarantino film, and that's the tension in the conversation. A lot of the time when we see like characters talking in this movie, it's kind of like paid off in some way, but not in a super tense way, if that makes sense. For example, take Django Unchained, Pulp Fiction, or Inglourious Basterds. A conversation starts and something very crazy at the end of the conversation happens. For example, the milk scene in Inglourious Basterds, the scene with the cheeseburger in Pulp Fiction, the scene with Candy in Django Unchained. I feel like we didn't get a scene like that like throughout the first and second act of the film. There were kind of like some scenes where they kind of started and ended with Leonardo DiCaprio crying, most likely, which was kind of funny. Like those were the payoffs. But what Tarantino does well is not that he doesn't pay off those scenes, because honestly, to me, it pays off at the very end. All these three stories that are being told are kind of like separate from one another, but it comes together at the very end. And some people will ask me, like, you know, is it worth watching this movie? Like, you know, the runtime is 2 hours and something. Like, is it worth watching that just for the ending? And I would say yes, because that ending is really good. The third act itself had me like glued to the screen. I mean, the movie itself already is already pretty good, but like I said, you feel the runtime. But the third act with Cliff Booth, freaking awesome. There were some scenes that I said, like, you know, they kind of just go on for a while, and I'm aware of Tarantino doing that with some of his films, and I'm okay with that. But there was a scene with Brad Pitt where it kind of felt like something was gonna happen, and it just kind of goes. And I was like, okay, like I felt like some of those scenes started and it just ended like that. Like I feel like there wasn't a huge payoff, and that's what I mean by, you know, that happens quite a bit in this movie, which is odd to see Tarantino take back, you know, kind of like a laid back approach to some of this movie. Like this movie in a way feels different from a Tarantino film, but at the same time, it does feel like a Tarantino film, especially at the very end. And there's one scene with Bruce Lee and Cliff Booth, which one was hilarious, but at the same time, when, you know, you realize what just happened, it's like, what was the point of that? I feel like this movie has a lot of great things, especially the production value, the actors themselves, and the storylines. The ending itself is something that I was not expecting. If you guys, like I said, Sharon Tate gets brutally murdered by the Manson family, and Tarantino took his liberties, and I'm glad that he did that, because it does not glorify the Manson family whatsoever, or the murder scenes, which to me was one of the things that I was worried about. Because I mean, Sharon Tate, if you guys don't know the story, I'll link my video here somewhere so you can watch it. I talk about, you know, what actually happened in those murders. And one of the best characters in this movie itself is not a person, but it's the dog for me, Brandy, Cliff Booth's dog. So obedient, and at the same time, let's just say they get a great payoff in the end. And it's amazing what they can do with animals in movies. And I love dogs, so that's another plus for me. So with that said, guys, like I said, you will feel the runtime. I think you definitely will feel the runtime, especially if you're not a Tarantino lover. Then this movie might seem like a slow burn for you, but the ending for itself does pay off. I honestly don't think I will watch this movie again, because it is a long movie and it feels long, but I feel like once it comes out on Blu-ray, I will definitely watch it again, especially at the comfort of my own home. Just spending 2 hours at a movie theater, I don't have the time. Overall, the performances for me were awesome. Leonardo DiCaprio did something that he hasn't done in a while, and that's portrayed many characters in the same movie, and I love it. I loved every single scene with it. Brad Pitt for me was probably the best thing about this film, especially at the end. Margot Robbie for me was pretty good. Although she didn't get a whole lot of screen time, she kind of was like in the backdrop of the movie. It was good. It was very well done, and I like what they did with her character. And also, the Manson family, you know, Charles Manson in his movie, they weren't a big part of the movie until maybe the very end. They were just kind of there in the backdrop, you know, kind of like telling us to be aware. So with that said, guys, I had a few minor issues, so I'm gonna give Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a 3.5 out of 5. It seems like a low rating for a Tarantino film, but it's not. I mean, it's still a good movie. I mean, some people might say that's too low of a score, but hey, that's how I feel about it, and those are some of the things that I didn't really like about it. Now, let's move on to the ending, because the ending is fucking crazy, and this is where I'm gonna get to spoilers. So spoilers, you've been warned. Now, the whole time we have been seeing snippets here and there from the Manson family, especially when Cliff picks up that one hippie and she's pretty crazy, I would say. And you know, they end up going to Cielo Drive where Sharon Tate lives, right next to Rick Dalton. This is where the storyline changes because the Manson family members go to Sharon Tate's and murder them because that's what Charles Manson did. But in this case, no, Rick Dalton comes out. It's like, you know, who the hell is outside with this piece of shit car making all that noise? And it's hilarious because at the same time, you know, Cliff Booth went out to walk his dog and Rick Dalton stayed behind to drink his margaritas. But what I love about the scene is Rick Dalton scares him. But I also love the payoff that these kids, they seem like kids to me, like Tex and the other people. They're like, oh shit, that was Rick Dalton. That's that guy from that one show. Like, holy crap. So Rick Dalton's character comes full circle because they recognize who this person is. And they recognize that he's a big movie star. So now the target becomes him, which is kind of messed up. And I like the fact that, you know, instead of attacking Sharon Tate, they go and attack Cliff Booth and Rick Dalton. But I love the whole scene where, you know, once they break in, Cliff Booth has smoked a cigarette dipped in acid, I believe. Don't know, never done that. I just like his performance in this one because he's kind of like, he's tripping super hard, and at the same time he's like, oh yeah, your name is Rex or something like that. And he's like, no. And then, you know, like the scene, he's just holding a gun to his face like this, and then he's like, and his dog just goes ballistic and starts attacking them. Like, I mean, shit. You know, they say once a pit bull gets a hold of you, they're not gonna let go. And that's very true. This is what happens in the story. I mean, it's crazy. Cliff Booth throws a fucking can of dog food at one of the girls and it just breaks her entire face. Like, it's deformed. You know, and what's even better was one of the payoffs from Rick Dalton himself, because he mentioned, there's a lot of clips where Rick Dalton is, you know, portraying some character, you know, and there's a scene where he's killing Nazis with like this flamethrower, and he brings out the flamethrower and lights up this girl in the pool, and it was so good. And what I love about this ending, not only that they actually killed the members of the Manson family, is that Sharon Tate's still alive. But not only that, you know, they've been neighbors, and at the end, you know, Jay Sebring comes down and says, yo, I heard gunshots and shit, like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, we almost got murdered. And then, you know, it's kind of funny at the same time. And then Jay Sebring's like, yeah, dude, you're Ray Dalton. And I love that because the whole time Ray Dalton thought that he was like disappearing into the backdrop of Hollywood. But no, these people still know him, they know who he is. And at the end of the movie, the payoff is that Sharon Tate invites him over to his house to like have a drink or something. And that's pretty satisfying if you ask me. Like, that's if like some famous YouTuber for some reason notices him. He's like, hey, oh yeah, I know your content. You do some content on YouTube. Let's hang out sometime. Like, that's how it felt for me, and it was awesome. So with that said, guys, I hope you guys do watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, especially if you're a fan of Tarantino films or if you're a fan of any of these characters, because you will have a good time. But like I said, it is a little bit of a slow burn, so for some people it might be a turnoff. I know some people were like, dude, where is this leading? But hey, that's pretty normal. So with that said, guys, make sure you guys like and subscribe to my channel. It will help a bunch, please. I'm not sure what other video or review I'm gonna do next, but I do have the Vegas video in mind, so I might start doing that soon. But as always, guys, stay tuned.